What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so today's video, we are going to be talking about Chapter 7 in Ten of Swords, New Mutants number 13 by Ed Brisson and Rod Rice. And in this issue, we are going to learn exactly how far Cipher is going to have to go to prepare himself, to steel himself in preparation of the Contest of Swords, and more importantly, why Krakoa doesn't want Cipher to compete. We're going to talk about all that and more right now, but first, wash your damn hands and let's hit that intro.
Word to wise, grass only greener when it's fertilized. Gave them truth in these songs, they prefer to lies. Destiny beautiful, adrift in her purple lies. You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
Before we get started, if you want to see more awesome comic book videos like this one, it only takes 2 clicks to become one of Earth's mightiest subscribers. Click.
When we kick this book off, of course, as we mentioned in the last video, that Cyclops, Cable, and Jean Grey are on the abandoned sword station, and Magic is basically trying to get Cable to get his ass back so that we could get this whole Ten of Swords business kicked off, this Contest of Swords, whatever. And while that is all well and good, Magic has bigger fish to fry. You see, Cipher has been chosen as a champion. More importantly, Warlock has been chosen as his sword, and Cipher is dealing with the weight of all this entire issue, because we haven't really gotten to spend much time with Cipher since the Ten of Swords announcement of who would be the sword bearers and what swords they would wield. We really haven't heard what Cipher has to say in all this, and more importantly, we haven't heard what Krakoa has to say about it either, much less Warlock. Warlock is completely okay with all this. I mean, yeah, sure, they're probably not, that crazy about the idea of being wielded as a sword going into a contest against Apocalypse's children. However, Warlock has already steeled themselves and prepared themselves for what's to come, but Warlock recognizes that Cipher is not okay. And Cipher feels like they aren't doing everything that they should be doing to get ready for this, to be able to do anything about any of this. And the only way that Cipher is going to be able to make himself an asset to the other sword bearers of Krakoa is to practice, and who better to help him than Illyana? Of any of the sword bearers that we've seen thus far, Illyana is really the only one who already came tailor-made with a sword of her own. Now, of course, she wields the Soul Sword, a sword that she created herself. This is a sword that dates back all the way to Uncanny X-Men number 171 in 1983. That sword is almost as old as I am. This sword can channel magical energies. This sword is also capable of casting spells and disrupting them. And of course, it has multiple methods of teleportation, healing, and regeneration, and is impossible to break. It's also capable of summoning soul armor, something that we see Illyana use from time to time. And even though this sword can be wielded by anyone, we know that it only truly unlocked when Illyana is wielding it. And this sword has grown with her over the years, and of course Illyana has honed herself as a warrior, as a weapon all these years, so it's no surprise that she beats the absolute brakes off of Cipher, who is not a warrior by his own admission. And Krakoa knows this. Krakoa is actually speaking out, saying that it does not want Doug to participate in the Ten of Swords contest. Krakoa deems that he find a replacement, but Doug doesn't want to go with it. Doug also doesn't feel all that comfortable about Mr. Sinister's plan to try to stop Apocalypse's children from obtaining their swords. Doug doesn't think it's gonna work, and even if it does, Saturnine will probably be pissed about it. Of course, Krakoa has its own reasonings for why it doesn't want Doug to go. Krakoa doesn't want Doug to go largely because, yeah, if Doug dies, he's not going to come back the same way. He will be changed, and thus Krakoa and Cipher's relationship will be changed, and Cipher is really the reason why a lot of this works. Cipher and Krakoa's relationship with one another is the linchpin, the glue that makes all this happen. Even going back, if you go back to Powers of 10, I believe is number 4, or just go read the whole story in general, it's really good. But the whole point of the matter is that the reason why Xavier was able to make Krakoa happen, he brought Doug to the island so Doug could communicate with it, because Doug is the only person on Earth who really seems to be able to have any kind of a passing conversation with Krakoa on any level. Maybe save for Mondo, but we'll get to that here in a minute. No matter what is happening though, Magic and Cipher are still going to try to train because he has to go, and this is just what it's going to be. But the thing that Magic is trying to make Cipher understand is that thinking that he's doing better by thinking that he's not too bad, that he's actually doing okay at sword fighting, is not going to save him from Apocalypse's children. Apocalypse's children are creatures who have basically been baptized in blood and battle and fire. They have been wielding a sword probably longer than they ever knew how to speak, before they probably even walked. They are deadly. It's gonna take a lot more than Cipher just thinking that he's getting passingly better at sword fighting and fancy footwork to think that he is actually gonna be okay in all this, and Magic wants him to understand that he has to do better. And Magic is worried for him, and rightfully so. Magic is one of his oldest friends aside from Warlock, and she wants him to be safe, but she knows what's coming. She knows the battle is going to wind up costing lives. She is a warrior herself. She understands that. She knew this the second she signed up for it. And she promises him that when the fighting starts, that he will have to stick close to her, and she's going to do whatever she can to try and keep him alive. But she also knows that this is probably a moot point. A lot of this is actually kind of pointing in the direction that a lot of people have posited, myself included. Comic Book Herald I've also talked with about this, and they have posited the same thing, that there's a strong possibility Cipher is not going to survive Ten of Swords. We actually, if you go look at the New Mutants solicits for post Ten of Swords, the very first issue following Ten of Swords, we see that of all the characters that are present on the cover of New Mutants, Doug is not one of them, the Warlock is. So yeah, there's probably a strong chance that Cipher's not gonna make it out of this thing alive, which I think would really suck, because I feel like Cipher's only recently come into his own just in the last year or so, in light of all the House of X stuff. So I was like, man, I was actually for the first time in my entire life really starting to like Cipher. It's like, I never gave a shit about Cipher until roughly about now, roughly about House of X. I was like, oh wow, this guy's actually really cool. Why has no one really used him in this way before? Speaking of consequences and circumstances, a member of the Quiet Council, they think that Doug should step down. They actually agree with Krakoa, and that's Exodus. Exodus thinks that, yeah, sit this bad boy out. You don't have to go. As a matter of fact, I think it is in the best interest of Krakoa if you don't. And more importantly, I will take your place. See, Exodus doesn't believe that Sinister's plan is going to work. In fact, the only reason he voted for it most likely was to get Sinister out of the way, which is why he immediately said that he wanted Sinister to go with the Hellions, because he knew the plan would fail, and he's hoping that Sinister dies. He doesn't care about the other Hellions for that matter, but he obviously does not want Sinister to come back. And this issue actually kind of made me re-evaluate how I feel about the previous issue. I said that, I felt like, Hellions number 5 felt like, the least Ten of Swords book out of the ones we've seen so far, and this being chapter 7 kind of helped improve my opinion on that, because yeah, this is a continuous story. It's it's one of those things that it's kind of easy to forget sometimes. I'm not used to seeing this in a lot of comics, especially event comics, and I'm glad to see that yeah, everything is actually kind of playing out, everything is interconnected. So yeah, Exodus, he wants Sinister to die, and more importantly, he thinks that in order to spare Cipher should die as well, though he doesn't mean this in a malicious way, but he feels that because of the way the protocols, the resurrection protocols, have been stunted as a result of the culling in X Factor number 4, he feels that Cipher, if he dies, he would be put out of commission and they would have to find a replacement. Now, once again, this goes back to the whole thing that Cipher said earlier about whether or not Saturnine would accept whether or not Sinister and the Hellions disrupted the plans of Apocalypse's children to get the swords. More importantly, would Saturnine even recognize a replacement champion? Saturnine was very specific about her rules for all this. But Doug, he is steadfast. He wants to go. He doesn't want to take the easy way out, despite both Exodus and Magic making very strong points for why he probably shouldn't go. And Krakoa even backs Exodus's play when Mondo comes to Cipher's room and takes over his body so that they can communicate. And once again, this is something we've actually seen happen in some of the earlier pages pages of the Dawn of X New Mutants title, I believe New Mutants number 1 and 2, I believe, we've seen this actually occur before, that Mondo is able to communicate with Krakoa, though not in the exact same way that Cipher can, and more importantly, because of the nature of Mondo's powers and, kind of being able to interface, with nature and things like that, Krakoa can interface with Mondo and for the most part speak pretty decent English. And yes, he thinks that Cipher should take Exodus's plan, though he doesn't want Exodus to kill Cipher. What Krakoa is offering is to put Cipher in exile, pretty much the same place as Sabretooth got put in House of X number 6. Ultimately, the reason why Cipher won't do this is because he knows that if he puts someone in the position that he is in right now, if he says, okay, fine, I'll take the exile, or I'll take the death, whatever, I'll take the L and sit this one out, he knows that whoever he puts in his position could potentially die, just the same way that he is afraid he will die, and if that person dies, that death is on his head, and he will forever feel that guilt for it. Cipher has accepted the fact that, yeah, I'm probably not going to make it, but that doesn't mean he's going to stop trying, and he does keep at it, and he learns. Once again, it's one of those things I'm almost surprised that Cipher didn't think of this sooner, but in the past, Cipher has been able to use his power to interpret languages to be able to interpret body movements, because that is, in a sense, a language in and of itself. He has been able to do this in the past, and why he didn't do this before, I have no idea. But the more important thing here is that he has been using his abilities to read Magic's movements and thus be able to anticipate her attack, something that allows him to actually hold his own against her. The only problem is that he also, because he's able to read her movements and use his powers to do so, he realizes that she's actually holding back against him. Though Magic does reveal that, yeah, he actually has gotten better. He has actually been doing much better than what he was. But at the same time, she also is going to tell him a very hard truth, that if he raises that sword against someone on Otherworld, it will be the last thing he ever does, and there's not a damn thing he can do to stop it. This issue was very good. I actually really appreciate the fact that we got to spend a lot more time with Douglas and getting to know him as a character. I feel like we don't get enough opportunities to really sit down with Doug and learn more about him as a character. I appreciate the fact that we got to learn a little bit more about what Warlock could potentially be capable of as a sword. I didn't really talk about it earlier, but we do know that the sword, because of the nature of Warlock being Phalanx, being Technarch, he can shapeshift and he is capable of regenerating himself, self-repair and all that good stuff, and he can absorb other inorganic material. And we've also seen in, I believe it was in Giant Size X-Men Storm number 1, he can also fire off energy blasts. Is something he's been able to do in other, in his normal capacity, but as a sword, he can still do it as well. Though I do find it very interesting that one of the attributes of him is compassion, which I think is very interesting for a sword considering what it's used to do. And I love the fact that Ed Brisson and Jonathan Hickman, and really everyone that's writing this, Teenie Howard, everybody that's kind of overseeing the story arc, they keep pointing back to the fact that there is a reason that Cipher and Warlock hid, Warlock's presence from the rest of the people on the island, and that the reason has still not been given. And I'm really curious to see what it actually is. I do think there is something still there with Powers of 10 number 4, where we saw Doug's hand, that was covered in Warlock, brush against flowers of the island and start spreading basically what is considered the transmode virus or whatever across the island. I'm curious to see how that's going to play dividends down the road. So we'll see. We don't know yet. We don't know yet. It's going to be a thing that's going to happen eventually, but hopefully we get to see a little bit more of it. I feel like by the time this is done, maybe in the beginning of the New Mutants arc that Vita Ayala will be helming once 10 of Swords wraps, we will learn more about that. But anyways, let me know what you think about Cipher's chances of surviving 10 of Swords, and more importantly, do you think he should actually try to get a replacement? I don't think he's gonna get a replacement, but do you think he should have tried? Wash your damn hands and sound off in the comments. So hey, you made it to the end of the video. Awesome for you. If you enjoyed this video, and if you made it this far, I don't see how you didn't, do me a favor. Hulk smash that like button. And if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, make sure you click subscribe so you can become one of Earth's mightiest subscribers, and tap that bell so you know when I post up. Also, feel free to go check out my Patreon, where if you chuck in a buck, you can get early access to most of my videos up to a week early. And if you have time, make sure you swing by nerd901.com, where you can find more of my content as well as other amazing stuff. Anyways, until next time, I love you 3000 plus ultra!